with Tom Fitton, the president of Judicial Watch and the author of A Republic Under Assault. Tom, great to have you with us, sir.
Hey, Vince, good to be with you again.
We've got the Biden administration. Apparently, the White House made a big deal this past week, Tom, that they let the FBI come into Joe Biden's house in Delaware for 13 hours because they were just being proactive. They said, hey, if you're not doing anything, come on by and search the home for 13 hours, would you? And so the FBI comes over. But now we see this reporting from CNN that the Justice Department was actually on the verge of seeking a warrant had Biden not consented to the home search. What do you make of this?
Well, I see some distancing between some in the Justice Department and the Biden White House. And, I used not to think that this was an effort to throw Biden under the bus. But certainly since this scandal has emerged, there have been some in the administration and outside the administration aren't letting this crisis go to waste. And it's really just absurd that the Justice Department is a innocent party here, and I really don't think it's credible. The fact is, the story shows, you highlighted the media headline. The subtext is, despite evidence that the Biden team was being dishonest publicly about the records.
Yes.
For instance, the Justice Department noted that when they first publicized this, they said, "Oh, we found records at that Penn office funded by the Chinese communists." But they didn't mention, even though it had happened already, that they had also found classified records or records marked as classified in his home. And the Justice Department thought that was weird. Now, just compare and contrast with what they do when they think Trump does something, quote, weird. They raid his home. And so this is a story of the Justice Department saying, we were prepared to issue a subpoena and raid his home, but, we got what we wanted anyway.
The extraordinary treatment that Joe Biden was given as opposed to Donald Trump. And by the way, the FBI, when they were going back and forth with Trump about documents at his home, documents that he says are declassified and he was right to keep, he says, regardless, when the FBI said, hey, could you put a lock on the door? He said, sure, I'll put a lock on the door. And he locked the door up, right? He actually had a single room that he locked up where he kept these documents. Not so in Joe Biden's case. Joe Biden apparently had these documents literally everywhere he's ever been, and including in the garage next to the Corvette. And when he was asked about this by Fox's Peter Doocy, he says, well, it's in a locked garage, as if, the Corvette is so valuable that he keeps it locked up nice and tight.
And isn't it interesting that the Trump invited, his people invited the DOJ officials visiting his property to look through the boxes, and they declined. And of course, they were happy to accept Biden's invitation to come and do it voluntarily.
Yes.
The disparate treatment just is remarkable.
I do think that Biden and the people around him wanted to avoid the warrant specifically, though, because we saw what happened in the Trump case. When they raided Mar-a-Lago, they sought a warrant to do that, and that resulted in a publicly released affidavit where they try and lay out all the evidence they have against Trump that justifies a raid on his home. And I think the last thing that Biden wanted was, or at least the people who might know better around him, is an affidavit going public that lays out all that evidence against him.
Right. And the trick he now has is that in order to get there, the Justice Department had to ignore the sort of triggers that would have led to a raid for anyone else. And, there's been this focus on records that former presidents and vice presidents have had.
Yes.
And, as I've been trying to tell you and others, that I don't think there's any there. They have a right to have these records after they leave office. And that was the understanding, and that was the Justice Department policy. And they changed the rules to target Trump.
Yes.
And they ended up catching everyone else here. But what he doesn't have an out on are the Senate records, the Senate classified material or classified material from his days in the Senate. He had no basis to keep that. There's no legal constitutional citation he can point to or court precedent that would allow him to keep those records. That's significant potential criminal liability, which to me should have also triggered additional law enforcement activity if they were treating Trump or Biden the same as Trump.
Sure. And I've seen comments from senators of both parties saying they are baffled how anyone could even be in possession of classified information, given the kind of the intense focus on keeping that content, including your own handwritten notes. If you were in a skiff and you take handwritten notes of a classified conversation, even your notes are still kept in the room with all the other classified stuff. And somehow Joe Biden made off with a bunch of documents. We don't know how many. Because they're not being forthcoming. The result of that 13-hour search, they say 6 items of classified documents. They don't tell you how many documents were actually involved. But I want to ask you about another location that's not getting a lot of attention, and that is the University of Delaware. The University of Delaware is the home of much of Joe Biden's archives, his collection of documents. And the public, up until this point, has not been able to see any of it. And I haven't heard anything about the FBI raiding the University of Delaware. What can you tell us?
Well, as you may know, Vince, Judicial Watch and your close friends at the Daily Caller News Foundation have been suing for, it seems like, years now to gain access to those records. We think that public dollars are being used to keep those records secret, and, therefore the FOIA applies in Delaware, and they've fought us tooth and nail on this. They don't want to even give us, forget about the records, they don't want to even give us the terms of the secret deal that's keeping these records away from us. And there are 1,800 boxes of his records from his days in the Senate. He was head of the Foreign Affairs Committee. I don't know in which capacity or which position he would have had access to classified records. But if you're doing a thorough investigation, which they pretend to be concerned about, they're going to have to go through each and every one of those documents. And I have a feeling that's why all those senators are so mad at him, both Democrats and Republicans, because they're probably as nervous as the former presidents and vice presidents out there getting this absurd letter from the NRA, National Archives,
yes,
asking them now to search for classified records. They're probably looking in their own bureaus at home saying, what do I have here?
Right. In other words, they weren't actually being all that scrupulous about how they handle classified information. They're mad that the cat's being let out of the bag.
That's right, because now the Eye of Sauron is going to settle its fearsome gaze on Capitol Hill.
Yeah. I gotta admit though, I was laughing earlier this week thinking about how the left constantly thinks the walls are closing in on Trump. Their view is like, we've got him now. We've got him on the classified document thing. And then everyone gets busted for classified documents. And they're like, how does Trump keep doing it? How do the cosmos conspire against us? We just want to destroy this guy.
Well, the legal position that I didn't agree with it because we lost when we took the position the Justice Department's taking now that they should be getting these records after they leave office. The prior legal position was after a president leaves office, no one can dispute how he keeps his records and whether he decides to keep them personal versus presidential. There's no second guessing, and the presumption is if he has them after he leaves office, they're personal. But they just said doesn't apply to it. Applied to Clinton in his sock drawer case, the infamous sock drawer case, but not for Trump. And so it became rather obvious if you're going to change the rules, someone at the Justice Department who wasn't crazed by their anti-Trump animus should have said, whoa, raise their hand. Hold on a second here, guys. What does this mean for every other former president and vice president? That now we're making their term of service as a potential element of criminality because they happen to have documents now we've decided they have no right to have because we hate Trump. Crazy town.
Totally crazy. Earlier this week, Karine Jean-Pierre was asked whether or not the University of Delaware search should occur. And the New York Post writes, the Biden administration kept silent Tuesday about whether the president would even approve a search of his Senate records at the University of Delaware. Karine Jean-Pierre said, as usual, I refer you to the White House counsel's office, and which, of course, is a dead end. But they don't want to talk about it, but you keep digging on it, Tom Fitton.
Well, let's make a prediction. There will be a search of those Delaware records, and the question is how will it occur, and will it be as obstructive and rigged as the prior searches of Biden's operations have been.
Let me add an addendum to your prediction. I'm going to add an addendum to your prediction. That search has already taken place, and we will find out about it in the days to come. They'll be like, actually,
I think that's a fair call too. I wouldn't bet against you there.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, based on their behavior already, they've made public, we found classified documents at the Penn Biden Center, and they didn't tell us that. Oh, they also found them in the garage next to the Corvette at that point. So they've lied about this before. Where does this go, do you think, this Biden classified document drama? As you noted at the outset, there's clearly people around him that would like for this to take him down. Does this result in that?
Well, the Justice Department's painted itself in the corner with their unprecedented analysis of the Presidential Records Act, making essentially putting all former presidents and vice presidents into the situation of potential criminal liability. So either they back down from that analysis, which would be horrible, or they just say you can't do this anymore, and everyone gets no one's going to be prosecuted.
Yes.
A get out of jail free card.
Well, if that's the outcome,
under the Constitution, they shouldn't need one.
If that's going to be the outcome, Merrick Garland needs to step up to the microphone immediately and just disband all of these special counsels and say, "Look, my bad. I'm going to take them all back. I'm also going to resign." Yeah. But let's stop wasting taxpayer money.
Yeah, think of Trump and Russia. They were all eager for Trump and Russia until it became clear it actually was about Clinton and Russia, and let's not do anything else.
Yes, that's exactly right. Hunter Biden, I was just telling the audience about this. The United States Treasury Department is refusing to give James Comer any of the information about Hunter Biden's over 150 suspicious activity reports in his finances. He's constantly getting money into his bank accounts that are deeply suspicious. The banks report this to the federal government. Treasury's in control of all of this, and they say they need a better reason to release this information to Congress. How hard is the Biden administration going to fight to keep this information from going public?
Well, they think time is going to be on their side, and from a political perspective, that's probably a fair analysis. So they're going to stall and delay. And the question for Republicans is it going to be 2 years of document fights, or are they going to cut to the chase, issue subpoenas, and demand accountability? And I think there's one underutilized power, hasn't been used in 60 years, where Congress can jail someone in contempt in order to force them to turn over information. They've done it before. It's part of their inherent authority to enforce their subpoenas, and they've outsourced it to the Justice Department. And when that happens, if the opposite party controls the Justice Department, it means Congress is out of luck. Mm-hmm. And there's got to be a different way of thinking about oversight of this gargantuan government.
So you want to see
there's no downside if you're a government official for refusing to comply.
So maybe we get the House Sergeant at Arms walks over and puts handcuffs on Janet Yellen, and then we really get business going.
It wouldn't be historically unprecedented.
Yeah, it could be interesting. Yeah, let's see if these Republicans.
Well, you want to give a congressman heartburn, remind them of that power, and they'll give you all sorts of reasons why they can't.
We can't do that. What will the New York Times think? I don't know.
Right, exactly.
All right.
It doesn't mean that no one. It doesn't mean that no one has access to the. Loses their civil liberties. They still have access to the courts.
Yeah.
It's just another court process.
Yeah, they'll have more protections than a January 6th defendant. So that's a start.
Oh, you can sure. Yeah.
Thank you, Tom Fitton. Great to talk to you over at Judicial Watch.